All right, we are just about 25 hours away from the tip-off. Warriors and Mavs Western Conference Finals. When we last recorded after the Warriors eliminated the Grizzlies, we were kind of arguing, not arguing, but debating about who would be the better team for the Warriors to face. I think you thought Phoenix is an easier out. And
I was on the I'm gonna need my flowers at some point because I called the Mavericks winning. I think I said some different things on a couple of pods. I kind of forget what I say. Maybe this one I took the Suns, the other one I took the Mavericks. But I just didn't want to go against the popular opinion. Like I was floating, like the Mavericks could really win this, but it was just so like unpopular to say that at game one, and especially by game three when they were down 0-2. But I was like, I still think that, Luka's different. And then I did say, yeah, I said the Suns would be the easier
yeah,
opponent, and maybe we'll get into that. But
and I thought if I thought they were close. There's pros and cons for both teams, but I think the main thing I thought was that the Warriors would be able to find opportunities to attack Dallas in easier ways than Phoenix. And then you watch game 7 and like there was no energy with that team. It was almost like they could tell that Chris Paul was not feeling great, and thus because he's technically, I guess, kind of their leader, uh they just didn't have that energy. It was like, oh, if he's not feeling good, I'm so if you I don't know if you went back and watched any or how much of the series you watched, but I went back, I looked at highlights of game 6, and then I went back to game 5 because I wanted to see what the Suns looked like when they were actually winning and what the difference was. And it was really, they were just running, they had energy. Defensively, they were getting out, like they were being physical with Luka. Like, Luka's great, but you touch this guy and he does the Jordan Poole stuff, right? Where he makes the face and he's like flails out like, oh, he's trying to get a call is what he's trying to do. But what happens is when he does that, it's fast break on the other side because he's not getting back on defense. He's trying to sell this call. And so, it really was about energy. It was about them, how they were able to just get out, get rebounds and such. But yeah, in 6 and 7, Dallas slowed that game down to their style, and it was like, Luka's his butt is kind of a pivot foot. It's like he doesn't have a pivot foot; he has a pivot butt. Like if he gets his butt on you, either way, he's either going to turn and go to the hoop, or he's going to turn the other way and shoot a mid-range fadeaway. Like he is so comfortable with that shot. Maybe more so than anybody I think I've seen since Larry Bird, who you didn't get to see play, but just so comfortable with that fadeaway. So, you know, great job by them in winning that series because they actually had to win that series. They had to go into Phoenix and win, and that was very impressive. Spencer Dinwiddie had a really good game in Game 7 to help them, but it was a crazy blowout. Like I don't know if I've ever seen a blowout like that in a final game of a series. I'm sure maybe on paper there is, we could find one, but yeah, that was impressive. So if they play like that, then you're right, they would be the harder out than Phoenix. But I don't know, just matchup wise, after doing a little bit of research, listening to all the stuff, reading all the stuff, I still think there are opportunities for the Warriors to find some life, find some. Memphis was so good at closing down opportunities, and I think the Warriors will be able to get some of these opportunities against Dallas.
yeah, I think that there are definitely some holes in Dallas's game where they just went up against Dylan Brooks, and Dylan Brooks, I think he's closer to Mikal Bridges than he is to Dorian Finney-Smith or Reggie Bullock in terms of perimeter defense. So I think that the Dallas might have I mean, if you look at previous footage, Jason Kidd sends 2 at Steph a lot,
Yes,
but the thing
we'll
is
talk about
that
that.
yeah, and you know what? I feel like a lot of the points I have is like, these teams haven't really seen each other up
Mhm.
to full strength. I feel like these might be later topics. But yeah, no, I could save some of that.
Okay, no, we'll get into it. But if you were to say, like, if a casual fan came up to you and was like, "Hey, what's going on with this Warriors and Dallas thing? Like, why would I be interested?" What would your headline be? Like, why is this Why should people be interested in this series?
If I wanted to like super juice it up into something maybe I don't even believe just to get people into basketball, I would say there is this player named Luka Doncic who is just like emerging into a superstar right before our eyes, potentially could be in the top 5 conversation, and he's looking to dethrone the best team in the past 10 years. I think that would be like a juicy headline I'd go with, making Luka like David and the Warriors Goliath.
You know what's so interesting is I was looking at how the NBA was promoting it, and it's sort of like that. It's like Luka against the Warriors. And if you want to go back to like 2015, 2016, that it was the other way around. It was like Steph Curry against, this team. And it's so crazy how only 6, 7 years later that you can flip that, because the NBA just funnels in so many really good young players. And Luca is one of those guys right now. He is somebody who I think, you know, if you're talking about who maximizes their value based off of getting to the finals or winning a finals, it's him.
Mhm.
Every piece of uh sponsorship that's around him, Jordan brand, all these different things, anything related to Luca, there's so much to earn here. And I think the NBA, if you think about where the NBA is, it's been a LeBron and Steph, and then a little bit further down the line, KD league since probably since about 2015, when Steph and the Warriors became the team to beat. And now those guys are in their mid 30s, and so it's like, what's the new blood? Who's in that new blood? We
Mhm.
saw it in the second series with Morant. He's definitely one of those next guys, but Luca is probably the best young player in the game, right?
It's
Like,
him or Tatum.
and he's like 2 years younger than Tatum, I think, too.
I think a year or two, yeah.
So yeah, and Tatum on the other side, fantastic as well. So I think, sort of what your headline was. I think it's very similar to what mine is, but I just find it so ironic that 6 years later, or 6 years earlier, it was flipped for the Warriors, where they were Steph and team, and now it's the championship gold-blooded team Warriors versus Luca and the upstart Mavs. It's just fascinating theater, and I'm really digging it. Okay,
Yeah, and I think wait, really quick, because I don't know if we're gonna get to this, but I would like to say that even though Dallas came up on top on that Phoenix series, it wasn't entertaining. There wasn't really a
all
close game in that
blowouts.
series. It was all blowouts. So, Draymond said that he kind of called it with Memphis and the Timberwolves, where I think he said in a press conference maybe a month before the season ended. I forget when exactly it was, but he was saying how you can never really count the Grizzlies out there. Like, they come back in the second half if you think you have them. That's what they did a lot to the Timberwolves. They didn't really do that to the Warriors, but I think Dallas is more now a team where you can't really count Dallas out. They were
Yeah.
down 0-2 against what I thought was the best team in the NBA, and they ended up winning the thing in Phoenix. So, I mean, if I'm not, I don't know if you could tell the Mavericks that, they can't touch the sky or they can't touch the moon if they were just beat the Phoenix Suns, the best team in basketball, in Phoenix. So I feel like they're coming in with loads of confidence.
All right, if folks are watching us live and you want to add your color commentary to what we're talking about, throw a comment in. We'll put it on screen, and we'll discuss it. But we're gonna go. After every game, we do the 3 points thing. I'll go to the 3 main points. I did the same thing with this preview, and I think point number one is Luka's gonna get his. I predict he's scoring 35 points a game. I think he was at 31 against Phoenix.
Mm-hmm.
But how is the question? If we're looking at this from the Warriors' perspective, he puts his body into everything that he does. He does not get to that fadeaway without putting his body, using his body as a pivot, like I said. And so, if this game for the Warriors, and I think game one will be interesting, because I think game one is going to be such an interesting experiment, because they're going to try a bunch of things, but I imagine as we get further into the series, they're going to just adjust and adjust and adjust, and that's kind of what Jason Kidd does. But are the Warriors going to make this dude work for his points? you had differing. I know you heard the plus minus, but you had differing opinions about what they should do. Tim Kawakami said that he thinks the Warriors would be okay with Luka shooting heavy volume of threes. And Marcus Thompson said he actually thinks the opposite because catching fire from three is a way to get Luka started, and he would force Luka to the basket. And I sort of lean a little bit more towards Marcus in one sense, which is if he's got to get tough twos and he's got to bang into Draymond, he's got to bang into Otto Porter, he's got to bang into Looney at least early in the game. That could be a little bit of a wear and tear for him. We know conditioning is always a question with him, maybe the only question with him. Maybe on an island defense as well. But if he's just able to kind of get his points without having to really, really get to spots and work, I think that's a negative for the Warriors. What do you think?
Yeah, probably. I'm kind of leaning towards like I hope that they've learned from previous series where you had the Nugget series, you had Jokic, and they figured out that like tiring him out was pretty effective. In Memphis, it took them a while, but it looked like they finally got to Ja, and Ja started tiring out by game 2 or 3. And I just hope that, like Marcus said, they make it tough for him on the offensive end, and they also make it really tough for him on the defensive end. So you could tire him out because I think the most important minutes are probably going to be the non-Luka minutes,
I wonder
similar to how it was the Jokic ones.
what was his. I wonder what their plus minus was with him on the bench because the whole offense just revolves around him in a way that I don't think it does in any other team. Maybe we can go back a few years with James Harden, and he was very similar like that. But I told I don't remember who I texted, but to me, the difference between Luka and James Harden is like James Harden thinks about the game in a way of like analytically. He's like, okay, I'm going to do all of these things because the value of these things is high. And if I don't do these things, like, so what? I'm gonna leave, low risk money on the table. And like that's an interesting way to think of it. It's very similar to um, Daryl Morey style basketball, right? Like how the evolution of the game. I think Luca thinks a little bit differently, which is every time I touch the basketball, I'm going to get a good shot. And the way that I'm going to get a good shot just differs on the situation because he's so skilled with his footwork. But the main difference between the two guys is I think Luka's just got a giant killer instinct that maybe was missing from Harden. And this is not to say that Harden didn't want it hard. Whatever, he's excelled in every level of basketball in his entire life. And the only thing missing is a championship. And guys like Patrick Ewing and Charles Barkley also don't have championships. And I don't think people would say, oh, Charles Barkley had no killer instinct. It's just that Luka looks like he just wants it so badly. I mean, you see him talking trash. That's going to be interesting because I wonder if the Warriors get offended with his kind of weird trash talking. They're such a veteran team, but I could see Poole kind of getting involved a little bit there. But yeah, like I just see him as the high usage rate guy, but he's a high usage rate guy in a way where he's just like not going to be denied rather than, oh, I'm going to take this shot because this shot has a better points per attempt than if I throw it around and find this guy. Like Luke is just like, no, I am the best points per chance attempt on my team every time I shoot. And I think that's how he looks at it. So if you're the Warriors, how do you think they should, or how would you guard Luka? Would you throw a lot of zones at him? Would you give him a few different looks? Would you give him a little bit of Draymond there?
I said initially that I think Wiggins is on him to start, and then maybe they put Draymond on whoever they think might do the pick and roll with him, whether it's Kleba or Powell, and then you could have your two best defenders on the court making the decision whether they want to blitz him, whether they want to double him, whether they want to switch or stuff. That's what I was thinking initially. But I mean, zone was floated on plus minus so that when you have Poole in there, it's not a complete attack.
Box and one. I don't even know if I ever played a box and one in high school.
Yeah, no, I don't think I did either. But thanks to Nick Nurse for making that like a used thing again. I mean, in a bad way, in my opinion. I don't like it at all. But yeah, I saw that Sam from the Light Years pod today. He tweeted
Uh-huh.
out something that Obi sent to me. It was something like, comparing this team to the Houston Rockets from the 2018 or 2019 is lazy and inaccurate. I think it is kind of lazy, but I don't
Yeah.
think it's inaccurate. I do think that like Luka reminds me so much of that James Harden where he was just a high volume scorer, 35 points per game at one point, like where when the Warriors played him and I was watching it and James Harden had the ball in his hand, like
You were
I
scared.
personally didn't know how to stop him. It's because you bring Clint Capella for the pick and roll,
Yeah.
and then James Harden's just going like between his legs, either going to be a step back, like you knew it was coming too.
Yeah.
It was either going to be a step back three, it was either going to drive and draw a foul going to the rim, or he was going to kick it. Like you knew it was coming every time. And yeah, three things to like look out for, I guess is kind of like a lot, but he was just so elite at it that it really didn't matter. And I feel that same thing with Luka.
Yeah.
Like every time he takes a shot, regardless of how dumb it looks, is like this little like slow 1 foot in the air, one like almost like runner, but like fade away. Like it's just like unless I haven't seen his shot get like altered where a player like throws up some weird shot because the defense has been playing so well. Like I've never seen that with Luka. I just always think that shot has a chance of going in. So
You know what is also impressive is it didn't matter if it was CP3 or Booker or even Aiton. Like he sort of attacked them all the same way. And that's actually very impressive because you're not giving away, how you would attack a big versus how you would attack a small. You're sort of analyzing at the same time and using similar moves so that, the defense can't go, oh, if he gets a big, then he's going to do this. And then defensively, we can bring this guy. It's like, no, you don't know because he does the same thing every time. So you just have to defend him how you defend him. I think that's very impressive about him. Okay. Now, from the perspective of when you have a guy with high usage, he can wear down during the series. And so this is part of what I was saying in how he's going to get his points, because by game 7, is he going to be fresh? Against Phoenix, he was very fresh. He got hot in the first half and they just ran away with that game. I imagine the Warriors game series is going to be a little bit more of a grinded out kind of game. Their games are going to be a lot closer, like you said. Those Phoenix games were boat races either way, and so I think his level of endurance and being in shape, and look, the guy's going to also get dinged up because everything is physical with him. He's a big body, and he could get dinged up. He may also ding up somebody on the Warriors side. He's so big. I don't even know if he's necessarily strong. I don't know if he's going to win any weightlifting
he's
contests,
burly.
but he uses his size in a way that, you almost never see players use. So I'm just racking my brain thinking, if you're Steph, like even off ball, how do you get him on Steph so he's chasing? Right, because what he did in Game 7 that was great because Phoenix was missing a lot of shots. Is he mostly stayed near the rim so he could get
Mm-hmm.
rebounds and start fast breaks, which was perfect for what they were trying to do. How do you get him away from just being able to stick around the paint, and how do you get him chasing guys? Will be an interesting strategy, I think, for the Warriors.
Otto Porter Jr. and Kuminga come set Steph a pick because that's what I feel like might be on Luka might go on them so he could sink into the paint a little.
But you can also make sure that you have shooting, because let's say you do run a little bit of a pick and roll and Luka is cheating a little bit towards the middle, then there could be shooters open. So that whole chess match with what they're going to do with both teams and J Kidd. If the Warriors were not in this round of the playoffs, Dallas is my team. And the only reason, well, two reasons. Dallas is my team because of Jason Kidd. Like Jason Kidd was my favorite ever college basketball player. He's at Cal when I am a junior and senior, I think. And so I'm watching every game and just love this guy. And he gets drafted to Dallas. But the other reason is because my favorite player of all time His son is on the Mavericks. Unfortunately, he got hurt, but Tim Hardaway Jr. My Tim Hardaway is my favorite player of all time,
Mhm.
so I would have totally been rooting for the Mavericks.
And he got
And
hurt against the Warriors in the regular season.
I know that was the bummer. I think it was the first game, right?
No, I think it
Second
was,
game?
like, 2nd or 3rd.
Okay. Because yeah, so I don't dislike the Mavericks. And I didn't dislike the Grizzlies, but basketball dislike, not really dislike, right? You just
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
rivalry there, but I don't even really dislike the Mavericks. I'm gonna have to find some ways. Maybe Lucas complaining to the referees will get me fired up. We'll see after our post game shows. Okay, so next point here. This is on the Warriors side. Dallas is more than likely blitzing Steph Curry almost at every possible opportunity. Pick and roll, maybe not even in the pick and roll. And the one comment that Curry made about, he remembers not even shooting in the fourth quarter in that one game because they just take the ball out of his hands. Do you think this means that they're going to rely on Jordan Poole maybe than they could afford to in the
I'm
Memphis
just
series?
wondering that I mean, this is gonna go into my full point of, like, these teams haven't seen each other at full strength. Um, and, when they first played each other, no Clay. I think that's where Draymond initially hurt his back. That was, like, a game right before Clay came back. I don't know if we ever found the play that did it, but,
And Dre
uh
missed the last 3 games of the series.
so yeah, and then on the Dallas Mavericks side, they got Dinwiddie and they got and then Brunson's taking a step.
Yeah.
So I don't think either of these teams have seen each other at full strength. I just think the Dallas Mavericks are at their ceiling right now. I don't think the Warriors are at their ceiling, and I'm hoping they can get to it. So I just for what was the question again? Blitzing Steph. What I meant, yeah, okay. So what I was saying about
You
that
you
is
had
that
you had your takes ready and
yeah,
you
yeah.
were
So
ready to
what
deliver.
I was gonna say about that is that they haven't seen him in full strength. So that means that, Clay was a shell of himself the second time they played. Jordan Poole, I didn't remember this, but in the plus minus pod, they said that that's kind of where Jordan Poole started that 20-point game streak.
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
They
That's where he
lost that
started it.
game, though.
Mhm.
They did lose.
But so, they haven't totally seen what the Warriors have looked like at full strength. And to be fair, not many teams have. It's because the Warriors themselves weren't really at full strength. When full strength, I mean, healthy
Yeah.
individuals on the team. And so not many teams have seen it. So I'm hoping that, with the healthy Iguodala, do we have any update on him?
Just that he's gonna be out another week, so
Oh, so he
probably
misses games 1 and 2.
I think, yeah, missing games 1 and 2.
Jeez.
So Mark Nobita, he made a point, which is what I was gonna get to, which Steph gets blitzed, Poole becomes a very dominant ball handler for the Warriors, but he also cannot go too fast because I think there's going to be opportunity for him to look at the court and how the court is balanced. You say, "Oh, 2 guys with Steph, 1 guy in the corner. We got a 3-on-2 on the right side, and he's going to want to go." I think that's natural basketball instinct. The problem with that though is Steph is going to run his route, right? Steph is like a wide
Mhm.
receiver out there. He runs his route until he gets open, gets through a screen. And so, unless Poole 100% has an open lane to the bucket and can get to the bucket because Dallas doesn't really have any shot blockers, then I think he's going to attack. But if it's not there, he's got to be patient enough to let Steph do his thing, to let Clay do his thing, to let the play develop. And that's going to be interesting. Poole cannot get tight is 100% the thing, because basically what you're doing, and this is very smart for Dallas, is you're making the least experienced guy in this moment on the Warriors be the decision maker. Now, what the Warriors could do is somehow have Draymond not be a screener and Steph's first outlet be to Draymond. Then Draymond becomes the decision maker. But the problem with that is the court can kind of get unbalanced if you're playing small and Draymond is up top. So that this whole thing again, the chess match of this, how J Kidd figures out what he wants to do. And man, can my guy like there are a lot of people who don't like Jason Kidd. He's had some bad press in his career as a younger person. There was some, you know, abusive things that had his I think his ex-wife had said some things about that. So there's a lot of guys that don't like Jason Kidd. There was a couple of different runs for him as a coach. You remember the thing where he spilled the cup of water on? Do
Mhm.
you remember that?
I do remember that.
And
There was
like,
also a thing on Christmas, right, where he made all the guys come in. Didn't you tell me about that on
I
the
think
Honest
so.
book?
Uh huh.
Yeah, but I was actually saying it on my podcast that, yeah, like you said, there's a lot of that stuff, but he was assistant coach for the Lakers.
Yep.
So I hope he got some of his act in that sense figured out a little bit. Kind of a similar player structure in that you have LeBron James who you're catering to, now you're catering to Luca. So
Do you know the history of Jason Kidd and LeBron James?
I don't.
Okay, so Adrian Woj, when he was reporting for Yahoo, this would have been 2012 Olympics. So we're talking Redeem Team.
Yeah.
So Jason Kidd's on that team, and one of Jason Kidd's jobs was to basically mentor LeBron because they didn't want LeBron on that team because of what happened in 2008. And LeBron's a child, in 2008, right? He would have been like 23. And so it was like all about, they didn't want all of LeBron's people with him, and they were like asking for certain things. You know, I want this to happen in order for me to play X, Y, and Z. And so I think it was Coach K who was like, I don't want this guy. Now, I may have that wrong. I should have read this story before knowing that I was going to talk about this. But somebody said, I don't want this guy. And Jason Kidd was like, I got him. I'm gonna mentor him and make sure that that there's no problems here. So when Jay Kidd went to LA, I was like, oh, Vogel's done. Jay Kidd's the coach. And you kind of that probably should have been what happened, right? Based on what happened to the Lakers.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
mean,
that probably should have been.
Jason Kidd comes into this Mavs team and just made these guys play basketball, and that's what the Lakers needed. So that's the story of Jay Kidd and LeBron.
Yeah, I think the Lakers needed more than that, but it's not a Lakers podcast. I think Kid would have still failed.
All right. So, is there anything you think the Warriors will attempt to do to unleash Curry a little bit more? Like maybe Jordan Poole
Like
is the
brings
ball
it up.
handler early on,
Mhm.
or maybe Draymond brings up the ball more, and Steph plays a little bit more like a two, and thus they can't really trap him in that way. Because the reason why they were able to trap Steph a lot in the games against Dallas is, like you said, the Warriors didn't have all their guys. Clay missed the first game. Draymond missed the last 3 games, and Clay missed one out of the last 3 games. So it was like Steph and the rest of the team who weren't the superstars. So I kind of wonder if we're going to get a lot of Steph off ball initiating stuff.
Yeah, and I feel like it's not even fair to say that like Clay played X amount of games against the Mavericks because it was just not Clay. But I think that 2020 Steph season is one of my favorites because it was like people sending 2 and 3 at him, and he was still just like averaging. He got the scoring title, and I just remember every game being like, just wait until next year when we get Clay back. Just wait until we get a couple shooters in the offseason. Then teams won't be able to do this again. And, it hasn't totally translated to that, but I hope that they blitz him right away. And maybe ideally Clay or Poole can get easier looks. And it starts that. And then the Mavericks can either live or die by just continuing to blitz Steph, and then the other guys can go off. That would be like perfect situation scenario for me. But I know that Poole hasn't been as consistent. You saw in the Memphis series, Clay hasn't really been consistent. You've seen it throughout the whole season. So when I say like the Warriors haven't hit their full ceiling, I do think it is for those guys to like be consistent. And then obviously Steph would, in my head, if Steph's not getting blitzed and Steph's getting one-on-one, ideally he could return to an MVP form. It's all ifs and it's all, that, but I just think that if that, I think that's what they should do with the blitz. I think you're right though that that Poole and Draymond could also bring the ball up. Steph can be doing a lot of that off ball stuff. People could be setting screens for him to get open. But I mean, it just seems like when Steph is on the ball, better things happen. I'm a fan of Steph on the ball.
By the way, we have some breaking news here.
The lotto,
the lottery. What happened here with the lottery?
I cannot believe it. When I just saw who got it, the Sacramento Kings are probably jumping up and down, crying, hugging everyone in their family. And then who someone else got two. OKC got two is so huge. That is crazy. They got two, right?
So,
The Pistons lost the lottery.
yeah, the Pistons are number 5.
That sucks.
The Pistons, the Rockets, and the Magic all had the best odds to land the number
The
one
number
pick
one
at
pick.
14%. Oklahoma City 12.5, Indiana 10.5, Portland 9, and Sacramento 7.5. So I'm still trying to figure out what is the order that this all happened. Okay,
Yeah,
so
I don't know.
top pick went to Orlando, number 2 went to OKC, Houston got the 3rd pick, Sacramento Kings got the 4th pick. So that's yeah, that's pretty crazy.
Dang,
Oklahoma,
Pacers fell too. That's that. I'm sure those guys are sad. Pistons and Pacers fans.
and then the Lakers get the 8th pick, which goes to the Pelicans immediately. Very interesting. Orlando Magic. What do you do if you're the Magic?
Well, the thing is that Chet Holmgren and Jalen Suggs played high school ball together. So I was thinking
Yep,
that maybe
that's
there's like a
interesting.
connection there. That when they drafted Jalen Suggs, obviously a disappointing rookie season, but I thought that that was kind of be like to give him the keys. He's going to be like he's going to kind of run the offense. He's not really a scorer, but I think he's I compared him to like less defensive, more offensive Drew Holiday, and I do think that's a really good player. Maybe not someone who'd give the keys to, but I was thinking
Maybe.
that maybe he'd get some early decisions of like, I played with Chet. Chet's obviously like arguably the top, not arguably, he is the top 2 pick in this draft. It's either him or Jabari going 1 or 2. Like, I played with him in high school. Let's get him on the team.
I watched, obviously, I watched a lot of Jaren Jackson in this playoffs. I think if you're getting if you're getting a center, he has to play like Jaren Jackson. I don't know how.
Chet won't.
Yeah, and that's the problem, right? Because when you play, like it's the same thing that happened to Aiton. Aiton is Aiton is actually a pretty athletic 5. But even at that point, when the game changes and when they try and figure a way to get you out of the game, like Aiton couldn't play in that end of that last
Mhm.
game. So I really wonder if you're going to waste and not waste, but if you're going to use your number 1 pick on a guy who the teams are going to go like, okay, how do we get this guy out of the game? And that's what we're going to do. And then you got to take him out.
I feel like Chet's going to be a 4 in the NBA. He's a 7-footer, but he's not like, I don't think he's as physically. He's a really good rim protector, but like I think obviously no one can guard the Embiids and the Jokic's, but I think Chet would have a really tough time because if you look at him, he's tiny. So, I mean, ideally he's more of like a Mobley than anyone. I think Mobley's awesome, but I think I could see a lot of 4 from him, a lot of behind the arc stuff, maybe.
Okay, so let's talk about one last thing, and then we'll talk a little bit about the other series too. But one last thing here, which is sort of the wild card. Jordan Poole, Spencer Dinwiddie seem to be the wild cards for the teams if you're just going to look at it on paper. Obviously, as we know, because of all the adjustments and such that both coaches are going to make, it's going to give opportunities for other players to have bigger games. Uh, and we've seen just Jalen Brunson have a big impact this season and in the playoffs. And like I watch him, and he reminds me of an old point guard, lefty. His whole like he's not like he's jittery and he's like trying to jump off of the wrong foot so that you can't time him, and he uses his body. But I wouldn't consider him like unguardable or super athletic or anything. Like he just
Mhm.
gets the job done, sort of like an old school like mid 90s point guard. um their wings, Brunson and Smith, they're about the same size. They're in that 6'5", 6'7"
Not
ish.
Brunson. Who was it? You said
I'm
Bullock?
sorry.
You
I'm
mean
sorry.
Bullock?
Bullock and
Yeah.
Smith, Finney Smith, 6'6", 6'7". They're going to defend the perimeter. They do their jobs by just shooting open jumpers, open threes. But I'm just trying to think of who else do you think could possibly swing a game or two in a way that I think most people think Poole and Dinwiddie might be able to.
I think it's how quickly they how quickly they bring in Kleba and how he because they were really good with Kleba against the Suns. So I'm wondering if he if that's going to work the same against the Warriors. They did some Dorian Finney-Smith center, I believe, in that series as well. Who else? I mean, Dinwiddie. We didn't. Oh, Dinwiddie's in the topic. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he and Poole, right? They're the wild cards. If they play well, more than likely their team wins, and if they give them nothing, there's a good chance that their team loses
Otto Porter
because they
Jr. for
defend.
the Warriors. It got to be one.
Are you talking about this guy? Hero. Otto the Hero Porter. What about this guy?
Kaminga watch.
Is he going to get
No
to play?
sexy music. I honestly, when I saw a lot of like the talk shows saying that, oh, you better watch out for Kaminga, I was like, did they not just watch the Memphis series? I'm not sure. But then Slater piled
Charles
together.
Barkley wants him to guard Luka.
Slater pulled together a good amount of clips of Kaminga, all of his possessions on Luka, and it's kind of like 50-50, but he's still causing Luka to like miss, and it's not just Luka missing, it's Kaminga like being up on him. So I do think Kaminga can get some run. I think that I think the Mavericks are going to start Dwight Powell. For how long? I'm not sure. For how many games until they figure out maybe that's not the move? I'm not sure, but I think that means we start Looney. And
I think
then
they just like the culture of that starting lineup, sort of like how the reason why Kerr
like
starts Looney.
Yeah. But I do like, I think this could be a lot better series for Kaminga. And I mean, against the Grizzlies, it seemed like Poole and Otto were both effective coming off the bench together with a lot of the highest plus minuses in a lot of the games.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like that's when they find their run. Now, I think that Kaminga could be put into that little group too. And that would be, I think that would be pretty interesting and a plus for the Warriors that I think Kaminga could provide. And Kaminga had his best dunk of the year against this team.
I think the interesting thing about Kaminga is if he does get a little burn, knowing that he's not going to play a lot, you could put him on Luka, because then if he's going to get a foul or two, you give a little bit of a rest to the other person, and there's an opportunity for him to poke a ball out and get a steal, to hold his ground, and maybe Draymond starts gassing him up after a stop, and it kind of gets the team into it a little bit. So I think there are some opportunities, but I don't know if Jonathan Kuminga is a big part of this series. I think something would have had to happen with injuries or with bad play, because we saw
or just
what they
really good play.
But an interesting one, and there's another guy that you like. Could Moses Moody see a little bit of the floor?
I don't see how, but it seems like the plus minus guys think that there's a chance. Tim Kawakami said that. Remember how I was saying after game 5, I was like, dude, he played really good. Like he had like I forgot how many points he had, but he just looked like he was in control out there. I get it. They were getting blown out by like 40, but he made sure it was only like 30. But I think he just brings a lot of the things that the Maverick supporting cast have, like in Reggie Bullock. Maybe not as good of a shooter because he's not as tested in the playoffs as Reggie Bullock, but 3-and-D. And I think just going back a little bit to Kuminga, if you do the box and one, I would do it with Kuminga on Luka, because I feel like Kuminga's not the best help defender. His IQ is a little low. When we always point out that we see Draymond or Steph like pointing at him, like, come on, man, like, do you not realize we just practice all this for this, and you come in here and you don't know what you're doing? But I think if you just do a box and one where you say Kuminga, just stay on Luka on defense. That's all you have to do. You don't have to worry about help defense and stuff like that. And even if Wiggins is in the game, I'd still prefer that, because I really like Wiggins and help. I think Wiggins' IQ is up there too, is pretty smart. So I would prefer that.
Okay, so Wiggins proved in that Memphis series that he is built for this, right? Because that's something that we wondered, is Wiggins, and not that we are built for it. It's just our eyeballs know, based on the last several years, of what a championship player looks like. Not to say that he's going to go out there and all of a sudden he's going to be back to the two-way Wiggs he was in the first half of the season when you wanted to buy his All-Star jersey. But it does feel like he now believes that he is this kind of player, because he'd never been out of the first round of the playoffs before. And so this is also a little bit of new territory. He's hit a couple big shots now to kind of get to understand. That's what I'm waiting for Jordan, is just when he does make, he's so swagger and so confident, and like he's got to do it, and then he can really believe it, because I think some of it is just him trying to get himself to believe it, because he's so talented. Okay, I think on the Warriors end, My wild card is unfortunately one that I don't even know if he's going to play, and it's not GP2. GP2 is sort of it's one of those things where if you get him back, it's like, oh, like we didn't even expect it, so it's just a
Yeah.
bonus. Iguodala is my wild card because if he plays, he is able. I think if he was able to play in that Memphis series, some of those runs that Memphis went on would not have happened because he would have pulled the ball back and just been like, okay, like, let's be smart about this. And on defense, he would have got a swipe down. He would have got a steal. They would have got a turnover that would have led to something. And I think he is, if he can play, I think he's going to be meaningful. He's not going to be meaningful probably shooting a three. He's not going to be meaningful in a way where you're like, oh man, this is like 2014 Andre Iguodala again. But there are so many intangibles that he provides that I think he can. I think he can be somebody who really helps them win a game. And the guy's looking sweet on the sideline, but I'm sick of seeing him in street clothes, man. I want to see him in a uniform, and I can't. I'm just so desperate and hopeful that he plays, whether it's in Game 3 or whatever it is.
I hope that guy's here forever because it seems like even if he's not playing, he seems still effective on the bench. Where I think there was a couple times where the camera zoned in on him, like seriously chatting to Poole, or when Kaminga went to the scores table, he'd go with him and say like a couple things. It just seems like he's a big help in that side too.
All right, do you have a prediction?
I said Warriors in 7,
That's where I leaned as well.
but it does feel like Dallas can grab a game at Chase these first two.
If I was a better for my schedule and for our podcast schedule, I'm in Vegas in Game 6.
Ooh.
I don't know. So we won't have a podcast after that game. If we get to a Game 6, I will be back by Game 7. And I think Game 7, I think we're going to invite people here because it just to also celebrate my birthday. But yeah. So if the Warriors can wrap it up in 5, I'll be so thankful. I'll be like, yes, I don't have to worry about this while I'm in Vegas. But that's just not how Western
It's
Conference
not
Finals
happening.
work.
Yeah,
It doesn't happen like that unless it's Portland that we get to play. So yeah, I think Warriors in 7 as well. You could talk me into Warriors in 6, but I think a couple of things would have to happen. One would be this injury luck that, Andre and GP2 coming back. But the Mavericks are going to make it a series. They're going to grind. There's also this little bit of, they've never done this before, which is interesting to me. And it's going to be interesting to see how they react, especially these late games. Like I said, I think Luka's a killer. I don't think he's going to be, he's not going to get tight. But there are other players on that team who have never been there before, so it'll be interesting to see. But all right,
can you be talked into Dallas in 7, or do you think there's no chance?
Oh, there's always a chance.
Okay,
there's definitely a chance.
Because when I pick a team in 7, it really means that like I think it can go almost either way. I don't think it's 50-50. I don't think it's 51-49, but it's like 55-45.
Honestly, I think Memphis is a better team than Dallas. I just don't know if you put Luka on Memphis, that team might win 65 games, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's just a different style. With Ja, you put Ja on Dallas, they might be almost as good too. But for whatever reason, Memphis just played so well without Ja. I'm not exactly sure what that is. Someone's gonna have to study that. But maybe it could simply be just defensively.
Yeah. What I do want to ask you though is I like to do this a lot, and I saw that Bill Simmons did it on his podcast too. They did a draft, but I was thinking we could like rank the best 5 guys in the series. So I would I don't know. I wonder how many Warriors fans are listening right now, but I would go Luka 1.
Yeah. I mean, in a game like this, I think I'm fine with going Luka 1, just because. But I think we're also looking at it as he just means more to Dallas. Like if he's not on the court, it's worse for Dallas than maybe if Steph is not on the court because they have a Jordan Poole
for both teams.
They have a Jordan Poole, and Dallas doesn't have like a Luka Light in any way to replace him. So I'm fine. I'm fine with Luka going 1, but if I don't know, fourth quarter, Who do you take, Luka or Steph? If
It's
you need four,
close. I
if
think
you
it's
need fourth,
close.
Steph leads the playoffs in fourth quarter
Yeah.
scoring, right?
Yeah.
So, Bill loves Luka, and he's been on this Luka train since the draft. So he's really rooting for it, which is good because he's also rooting for the future of basketball. But I think it's really close, Luka or
Yeah, yeah, I
Steph.
know. I think I said Luca a little too confidently. It is really close. I just thought that saying Luca was like a really hot take, so I wasn't sure.
Would you take Brunson
Okay, so
over?
that's where I think it gets tight is because when
I
I
take
say who
Draymond
are the
over
best,
Brunson.
me too. But when I say who are like the best 5 players, I don't like just factor in the playoffs because maybe I should, but I factor in like everything, and I
Hmm.
I think that like Brunson, the reason why some of these guys like I don't know are going on a hot streak or I don't want to say Brunson's like a role player, but Grant Williams goes on a 7 for 18 shooting
Hmm.
night, which is a bad shooting night, but they needed all 7 of those threes. It's because they're role players. You can't expect that from them every night. And Brunson hasn't come out and scored 30 every night. So I don't know. Draymond's consistent and maybe he has a bad game or two, but he's still really needed. And I would argue putting Poole and maybe not Poole, but maybe Poole and Clay above Brunson as well, because I just think that Clay, especially in his career, has done it at a high level, and I do feel like I really hope that this is a good Clay series, like a consistently good Clay series, because I need one. I need one for
So
him.
I would say uh it would probably be Luka, Steph, Draymond, Brunson, and Clay, or Clay or Poole. I would pick Clay or Poole before I
Can
would
you
take
argue Wiggs? Because I feel like a lot of people are under Bill and Rosillo, I
Russillo.
believe, had they might have had Dorian Finney-Smith and Klebo over
I
Wiggins,
think
and
I
I'm like,
would take all three of those guys before I take another Maverick.
okay, I'm with you there.
So I mean, but look, we watch them, right? Like they're not watching them as intensely as we watch them. They
Yeah,
watch them
yeah.
through a different lens. Okay, so let's talk really quick, just for a couple minutes here, and then we'll get out of here. Uh,
Same
Tatum.
picture.
I know. I got lazy.
It keeps working though. Tatum keeps going.
I know. We just had Tatum and Giannis the whole time, and they were always playing no matter what, so it always worked. Um, I think Boston. No, I'm sorry. I think Miami needs to win both games at home.
Yep.
Today, the game just tipped off as we're talking. They are without Horford and was it Smart?
Mm-hmm.
Miami needs that game
They
like
can't lose
nobody's
this game.
business.
They
No
can't
way.
lose this game.
No.
Mm-mm.
And I think they need game 2 as well, because Boston goes through this really tough series with the defending champions. Miami has a fairly, I wouldn't say easy, but they certainly didn't go through the same grind that Boston did. And Boston is sort of ready. It seems like they're ready to take it to that next level of elite basketball. And if I'm Miami, I want to make it as hard as possible for them to get there. And that's why I think they need to steal, or not even steal. They're at home. They need
They're
to
at
take
home.
both of these games
Yep.
and make Boston win 4 out of the next 5.
Yep. I have the Celtics in 7. Me and Alex on my podcast were kind of agreeing that it does feel like the Celtics are just like the better Heat. The Celtics had the number one defense in the regular season. It seems like their defense kind of picked up where it left off in the playoffs. The Heat have been struggling to find consistent offense. Tyler Hero, I think, only averaged 14 so in the Philadelphia series, while averaging like 20 something in the regular season. So they kind of need him to step up. He hasn't been lately. Obviously, Lowry's injured too. It just seems like my biggest point was that it seems like the Celtics, they have been, they found the test in the playoffs that I don't think that the Heat have been they haven't found like what's the word I'm going for, but like the Heat haven't gone up against a fair enough opponent for me. And I like they played the Hawks in the first round. And I will always say that, the Heat getting the first seed, it means you should get the easier road to the playoffs. But I feel like it's almost shooting yourself in the foot because you go play the Hawks. That doesn't really show me anything. You beat the Hawks. You were the best matchup against them. Trae Young was absolutely useless because the Heat were able to trap him on almost every single play. And you go up against Philadelphia, who Embiid has the broken orbital fracture and the torn thumb, and he misses the first 2 games, and you beat them in 6. I still don't feel like that's the real test. Whereas the Celtics beat Brooklyn in 4. Don't think that was a real test, but the Celtics beating the Bucks in 7, like that's to me better than anything that the Heat went through or even went through in that 2020 bubble run. So I just think that the Celtics are battle tested, whereas the Heat have not actually had a test in these playoffs yet. And I think,
It could
that's
mean
going to
that,
bode well.
but it could mean that maybe they're in a little bit better shape. Maybe they're not as beat up. But then again, Kyle Lowry hasn't been able to play
They have old guys, man.
much. Yeah, so it's very interesting. It's if the Heat are able to beat Boston again because they beat them in the bubble, I think it's more of a hit to Boston than if Boston was to beat Miami, because if Boston beats Miami, I think the collective basketball universe just goes, "Yep, that's how it works."
Hmm.
Young teams, when they figure it out, they're going to always beat the older teams. But if the Heat beat them, I think there's going to be so many questions about Boston, and I mean, I would assume they would just run it back and hope that,
I think they would.
and hope that they can make a tweak here or there. But I feel like, that would be a bigger loss for them, so I'm rooting. I don't even know who I'm rooting for. I think the Warriors might have a better shot at beating Miami, but I don't even know that for sure. But I think Boston will win as well. But if the Heat do take the first 2 games and you put the pressure on that young team to win 4 out of 5, there could be a couple of tight butt
Yeah.
cheeks going into some of those games.
And
Um,
I feel like I give, aside from like talent, when you match up the Warriors and the Mavericks, I feel like I give the Warriors the edge because they've been there. They have the accolades to prove it. They've been through the playoffs plenty of times, and I think they're made for the moment. Although the Heat haven't really won a finals with Jimmy there. They got to the 2020 bubble finals with Jimmy, Bam, Tyler Hero. We know
yep,
Lowry beat us in 2019 with that Raps team.
yep.
A couple other players have been there. PJ Tucker just won a ring last year. So I think there is some of that with the Heat too, whereas the Celtics don't really have any of it. But I just think the Celtics are way more talented, and we will see. But I have the Heat tonight. I think Jimmy Butler will be the highest scorer, and you should check out our Instagram stories on the BAM. I tried to do some graphics for like betting.
Oh, I'll definitely check it out. All right, so you find you on the BAM Pods on Twitter and the BAM Pod on Instagram. And then we'll be back tomorrow night with our recap of game 1. And then Friday is game 2. So already going to be well into this series by this weekend. All right. Thank you for checking us out, not only on the podcast, but also on the live stream. We'll be back in about a little over 24 hours with our recap of game 1. So see you then. For Bry, I'm Double G. See you when we see you. Peace out.